Mercury is the planet that represents your thinking style, or the way you tend to go about putting things together intellectually. When Mercury is in the element air, there is an experimental quality to the thinking. There's a reverence for ideas and discussions and learning. When it's in the first air sign, Gemini, there's a pronounced curiosity, and school generally suits this placement. Its need for mastery isn't very strong. Instead, it likes to learn a little about a lot of things. If you read basic astrology books, you find that Mercury in Gemini has the reputation of being a chatterbox. And it's true, when you see this in the chart of an extrovert, you get someone very fluent who finds it easy to strike up and keep conversation going. When Mercury in Gemini is an introvert, the interior world is lively. But remember what I said in the video on the personality profile of the Gemini sun. The twins, Castor and Pollux, are first and foremost messengers. So all forms of messaging, from texting to a game like charades, falls under its umbrella. It's a journalist deep in its soul, and it wants to get the message across in whatever way possible. Mercury in Gemini is so versatile, so adaptable. They never run out of ideas on what to say or how to say it. Also, remember what I said in the Mercury video on the god himself. I said he's the trickster. He messes with people's heads and plays pranks because he's playful by nature and thinks that's just funny. You see the same kind of playfulness with Mercury in the sign of Gemini. Take the artist M.C. Escher as an example. Firstly, he had the excellent fine motor skills and dexterity you often find here. Secondly, he saw all his art as a message to the world. He said it's human nature to want to exchange ideas. And I believe that at the bottom, every artist wants no more than to tell the world what he has to say. Painters sometimes tell me that they paint for themselves, but I think they would soon have painted their fill if they lived on a desert island. Whether or not that's true, a Mercury in Gemini is likely to think it's true. There's something very whimsical about his work. That means fanciful, imaginative, playful. He asked, "Are you really sure the floor is not the ceiling?" He said it was a game for him to make fun of gravity. And he remarked, "I don't see why we should just accept the outside world as such solely by virtue of our senses." The Peter Pan effect is always there when Mercury is in the sign of the twins. There's something youthful about this placement, and I think a lot of that comes from the ability to fly, to leave it all behind and move into the next moment. He said, "I don't grow up. In me is the child of my early days." It's pleasing to know people enjoy my kind of playfulness. He does seem to have been a very sophisticated, extraordinarily talented trickster. This placement is multifaceted, highly changeable, and that means it also has a plethora of negatives. The first is that Peter Pan syndrome, where the person won't stop playing and won't take normal adult responsibilities seriously. Play and pleasure seeking are the only things on their mind. Another pitfall can be shallowness. They dabble when it might be more appropriate to go deep, or they try to cover too much material in too short a period So they start talking before they really have their connections and conclusions worked out. Being spontaneous and being premature often go together. Another facet of this dark diamond is being scattered. This happens when Mercury in Gemini can't focus, when its fluidity just goes too far. It can come down to a lack of ability to prioritize information, and it makes me think of the web. The web makes no judgments about the messages it sends. An email about changes to the nuclear codes goes through just the same as an email about someone getting a dooney for $3 on a garage sale. I found this quirk when I worked for a Mercury in Gemini. She was competent, don't get me wrong, very good at what she did and very responsible. But she had a funny way of treating all information the same. She'd say, someone's coming in with a leg blown off. And also, here's that red paperclip you were looking for 2 weeks ago. Mercury in Gemini seems to file all information in the same Rolodex and has equal access to everything. My next example is Joan Rivers, the comedian. To begin with, a comic must be a good writer. Good writing is the difference between comedic gold and a joke that bombs. And her style of joke telling was nimble, as you would expect from this placement. They were almost always zingers. She got in quick and got out. You could see the twins working together brilliantly within her mind. Pollux used self-effacing humor and a massive level of insecurity, while Castor grew rich and famous in a mansion on Mount Beverly Hills. Plus, in her, you see the nervous energy that can buzz inside this placement. Being overexcitable, getting overly stimulated is one of the reasons Mercury in Gemini is so quick. There's energy to spare. If Joan Rivers is our example, we must deal with something that developed as she grew older. There are 3 signs prone to vanity. The 2 ruled by Venus, Libra and Taurus, want beauty because they overvalue and overinvest in it. But Gemini isn't coming from quite the same place. Its vanity is more from the superficiality I mentioned. And this happens when Gemini does too much skimming of the surface. I think it may be hard for the more insecure version of this placement to watch the body age when the spirit still feels young. But she ended up being obsessed with plastic surgery. The last few years, she looked like she fell face first into a tray of airplane glue. Astrology books will also include something along the lines of Mercury in Gemini is quick-witted and knows how to put people in their place. And they do seem to come up with things that are very cutting, very fast. It can be like getting pecked, or how a seagull flies by and suddenly you feel guano in your hair. I think it goes back to the unemotional quality to Mercury in the air signs. They aren't quite clear on what emotional effect their words can have on other people. Joan Rivers made a career out of those kinds of comments, most of which I think probably popped out spontaneously, and if they got a big response, stayed in the act. She never felt bad about anything she said either. Her thoughts were that laughter makes up for the horror in life, and people can take it. Is Elizabeth Taylor fat? She asked. Her favorite food is seconds. Elizabeth Taylor wore yellow one day, and 30 school children tried to board her. To be fair, Joan was equally hard on herself. She said, "My legs are sagging. Good thing my belly covers them up." And how about this Mercury and Gemini comment? I wish I had a twin so I would know what I look like without plastic surgery. Just as you would expect of any Mercury and Gemini, though, she had another side, a wiser side, with great advice for this particular placement. She said, no steam or gas ever drove anything until the fuel was confined. Niagara was turned into light and power after it was tunneled. No life ever grew until it was focused, dedicated, and disciplined. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Mercury in Gemini. I'm Joy. More videos to come.